I checked my safe after my family left. It was open, empty. My dad said, "We used it for your sister's tuition. She deserves it." I was shaking. Then I dialed my lawyer and said, "It's time." The next morning, my sister's enrollment was revoked. Their tax returns were flagged. A court order hit their inbox. By morning, my dad was at my door, yelling, "Are you seriously doing this?" I smiled and announced. I barely restrained myself from putting a hole through the wall when I saw the empty safe. It was 3 days after my family left. They'd been at my place for Christmas and New Year's, and honestly, I thought it had gone well. It wasn't a perfect visit. Lindsay was on her phone constantly. My dad snuck a few too many drinks when no one was watching, and my mom kept asking if I was ever going to settle down, but nothing seemed off. If anything, it was the most peaceful we've been in years. Then that morning, I went into the closet to grab some documents, and on a whim, I checked the safe. The door wasn't even shut all the way. When I saw the inside, I froze. It was like my brain refused to accept what I was looking at. The envelopes were gone, not moved, not misplaced, just gone. $19,000 in cash vanished. I had this tight, sick feeling in my chest that I only remembered feeling once before. The day my high school principal told me my mom had been in a car accident. I stood there staring at that empty safe, every single muscle in my body locking up. Then I started pacing, opening drawers, checking other places around the apartment like some part of me hoped I'd suddenly become senile and forgotten I moved the money. I hadn't. It was always there, always untouched. And now it wasn't. It took me an hour to sit down and admit to myself what had happened. The safe wasn't forced open. Nothing was broken. There was no break-in. Whoever took it knew the code. And only 3 people knew it. My mom, my dad, and Lindsay. I had given them the combination years ago after I landed in a hospital with a kidney infection and got paranoid about dying alone. I never changed it. I thought I could trust them. That would be the last time anyone else knew the code to that safe. I called my dad. No small talk. Just straight to it. I asked him, "Did you take the money?" There was a pause. Then he said completely casually, "We used it for Lindsay's tuition." I didn't say anything. I was waiting for him to explain. He did. "She's trying again, Matt. This is her last shot. We didn't want to ask because we knew you'd say no. But she deserves a chance. We thought you'd understand eventually." I hung up without another word. That sentence stayed in my head for hours. She deserves it. Like I didn't. Like the work I put in didn't matter. Like my savings were just backup funding for her impulsive life choices. Lindsay had tried school before. She dropped out after 2 semesters because she wasn't feeling it. Then she worked at a clothing store for a year before quitting and saying she was going to start a business selling thrifted vintage clothes on Instagram. That lasted a few months. Then there was a podcast idea. Then some short-lived obsession with coding boot camps. Now suddenly she was serious about school again. And apparently I was funding it without being told. That night I called my lawyer Cynthia. I explained everything. I wasn't even sure what I wanted at first, but she walked me through it. We started by freezing any accounts we could link them to. Then she helped draft a court order demanding repayment and filed to have Lindsay's new enrollment flagged. She also requested a review of their most recent tax return just to create pressure. The next morning, I got confirmation Lindsay was officially unenrolled. The court paperwork had landed in their inboxes. Nothing final yet, just the beginning. At 8 a.m. sharp, I heard banging on my front door. It was my dad. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I could hear the anger in his voice through the door. "Matt, open the door. Are you seriously doing this?" I opened it. He stood there red-faced and wilted like I'd kicked his dog. I just said, "This is only the beginning," and I meant it. He stood there on my porch like he expected me to apologize. Like I was the one who broke something sacred. For a second, I just watched him through the door, his mouth moving, his hand pounding on the wood, the sound echoing through the hall like a drum. I opened the door, stared at him for a second, and when he asked me if I was really doing this, I gave him the answer he deserved. "This is only the beginning." Then I shut the door in his face. He kept banging for a minute or two. I didn't care. Let the neighbors see. Let them hear. I wanted them to know something had broken. For the next couple of days, I didn't say a word to any of them. Not my dad, not my mom, and definitely not Lindsay. I watched the texts pile up. My mom's messages were long and careful. Her usual tone when she was trying to avoid a full-on argument. Dad's were short and angry, getting increasingly bitter with every hour I didn't respond. And Lindsay, hers just said, "Can we talk?" Like it was some high school fight and not a $19,000 theft. No, we couldn't talk. The money was already in motion. Cynthia had pulled strings like a magician. She found that the tuition payment had already gone through to Lindsay's school, but the timing worked in our favor. Since the payment came from a non-parental source and now had a formal legal dispute tied to it, the university refunded it directly to an escrow account while things got sorted out. That meant Lindsay was now unenrolled. She probably didn't realize it yet. We also requested a formal review of my parents' taxes. Cynthia was smart about it. She didn't accuse them of fraud. She just created enough noise to draw the IRS's attention to the sudden transfer of funds that looked an awful lot like an undeclared gift. The pressure would mount from all sides. I wasn't planning on destroying them. I just wanted them to feel what I did when I opened that empty safe. By Thursday morning, I got my first call from my mom. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail that started off calm, borderline friendly, like she was pretending we hadn't spoken in a while and just wanted to catch up. Then came the real reason. She said they did what they thought was right and that I was taking things too far. That Lindsay needed this. She said they knew I'd never agree and they were scared I'd say no. So they did what they thought was best. No apology, no ownership, just a soft version of "you brought this on yourself." That night, I got another knock on the door. I thought about not answering, but then I saw through the peephole it was Lindsay. I opened it. She looked nervous, like she didn't know whether to be angry or guilty. She sat at the kitchen table where we'd eaten Christmas breakfast just a week earlier. Felt like it had happened years ago. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She told me she needed the money to finally get serious. That this time it was different. That she had friends at the school who were going to help her find a job after graduation. That this wasn't just about school. It was about building a future. Then she looked right at me and said I was being cruel. She said I was trying to humiliate her, that I could afford it and I was just making a point that I always acted like I was better than them because I had a job and savings. That's when I realized something. They didn't feel guilty. They felt entitled. I stared at her and said, "You stole from me. What you're feeling right now, this shame, this fear, that's what you chose." She didn't answer, just looked away. I told her I'd make her a deal. I wasn't going to drag this through court. I didn't want to see my parents in a courtroom, but I wasn't giving the full amount back. $10,000. That's it. She could use it however she wanted. Go back to school, buy a laptop, sit on it. I didn't care. But the rest was gone. And I wasn't going to pretend it didn't matter. She left without saying anything else. That night, I got a message from all three of them. Group text. Thanks. Relief. Some awkward emoji from my mom. But I couldn't shake the feeling when I read it. There was no joy, no gratitude, not really. If anything, they sounded like people who were still mad they didn't get everything they wanted, like I cheated them by only giving half back. I didn't respond. I just stared at my phone, thinking, this isn't over. Not even close. It was my cousin Mark who told me we weren't close. Just the kind of relatives who saw each other at weddings and funerals. But he followed me on Instagram and messaged me out of nowhere a week after everything calmed down. He asked if everything was okay with Lindsay. I told him it depended what he meant by okay. He replied. She told my sister she got into some crypto mess. Lost a bunch of money. I stared at my phone for a long time. Crypto, not tuition, not books, not classes or a dorm or anything remotely academic. Apparently, the money went to a guy she knew, someone she called a friend. He had some brilliant scheme, she said. A new coin or trading strategy or whatever buzzword people throw around when they're about to set fire to thousands of dollars. She was convinced he could double it for her if she gave him a cut. So she handed over the money, the whole 19 grand. He promised returns in a month. By week 3, he wasn't returning her calls. Lindsay didn't tell my parents. Not at first. She told them the university was reviewing her financial aid paperwork. She thought she could still fix it. But the friends started getting spooked, told her to stop contacting him, even threatened to call the cops on her for harassment. That's when things started unraveling. My parents had no clue until a few days ago. Now they were panicking, too. I didn't even feel angry at first, just tired, exhausted from carrying this mess that they created and dumped in my lap. I called Lindsay. She answered on the second ring. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask why she lied. I just said, "I know." There was silence. Then she said she was sorry. Finally, she said she didn't know what else to do, that she thought if she could turn the money into more, she could pay me back and still have enough left over for school. She said she didn't mean for it to go like this, that she trusted the wrong person. I asked if she wanted to press charges against him. She said no, of course not. That would mean telling the truth to everyone. I told her I'd help get the rest of the money back, the other $9,000. But I gave her a condition. From now on, there are no secrets in this family. No lies, no quiet schemes behind people's backs. No pretending something didn't happen because it's easier to look the other way. Everything gets said. Everything is out in the open. She agreed. We called a family meeting the next day. First time we were all in the same room since Christmas. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody stormed out. I laid everything out. What happened, how I found out, what I was willing to do to fix it, and what I wasn't. I said I transferred the rest of the money, but it would be the last time I cleaned up someone else's mess without knowing what I was stepping into. They all agreed quietly, maybe even honestly. It didn't feel like forgiveness. Felt like a truce, but it was something. Sending the second transfer felt worse than discovering the money was gone in the first place. $10,000 not stolen this time. Given, chosen, my decision. Clean and final, typed out and confirmed with a click. I wired it straight to my parents, not Lindsay. If it was going to be handed off, they could do it directly. I wanted them to be the ones to explain it to her that this wasn't a reward. It was the end of the line. I didn't tell them when the money arrived. I knew they'd figure it out the second it landed in their account. Sure enough, my mom called that evening. She thanked me, said it was generous, said I didn't have to. But here's the thing. Her voice didn't sound thankful. It sounded relieved, like a tightrope walker who finally reached the other end and didn't want to talk about how shaky it got in the middle. She told me Lindsay was quieter now, spending more time at home. She was helping clean, cooking sometimes like she used to before. She got swept up in one dream after another. She said maybe this whole thing had been good for her in some awful roundabout way. A wake-up call. I let her talk, but I didn't agree. Not out loud because I knew something she didn't. People don't change in a week. People hide. People wait for things to settle so they can try again under a new name, a new excuse. 2 days later, Lindsay texted me. Hey, can I come over? Just to talk. Nothing else. I said yes. She came by in the evening. She looked smaller. Not sick, not broken. Just like someone who finally ran out of energy to pretend. She sat across from me at the table without touching her phone, which might have been the most honest thing she'd done in a long time. She told me everything. The guy she gave the money to wasn't just some cryptogenius. He was some guy she met in a Discord group where everyone posted pictures of sports cars they didn't own, then bragged about investments that probably never happened. She said he had a voice that made you want to believe him. Said he made her feel stupid for hesitating. She wanted to prove something to me, to our parents, to herself, that she could take a risk and win for once, that she wasn't just floating through life disappointing everyone. And when it all went south, she panicked. She figured she could get the money back before anyone noticed. She said she never planned to take it all, just a few grand. Then it turned into 19. And when the guy ghosted her, she realized she'd handed over everything and had nothing left. Not even a lie that made sense. I asked her what she thought would happen when I opened the safe. She just stared at the floor and said she didn't let herself think that far. She was hoping for a miracle. That's what she called it, a miracle. Like the universe would clean up the mess if she just kept pretending it wasn't there. Before she left, I told her something I probably should have said years ago. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't even need you to have a plan. I just need you to stop lying to me. To Mom and Dad, to yourself, she nodded. I mean it. No more pretending. We didn't hug. There were no tears. She just left quietly. And for the next few weeks, something strange happened. Nothing. No angry texts, no emergencies, no guilt-tripping phone calls. My parents stayed quiet. Lindsay stayed quiet. The silence didn't feel cold. It felt earned. Like a room that finally got aired out after years of stale air. I didn't forgive them. Not fully. But I stopped thinking about it every day. Sometimes that's all you can hope for. I didn't hear from Lindsay for nearly a month after that conversation. I didn't reach out either. Things were quiet, stable. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it didn't until it did. It was late on a Wednesday when I got a call from an unknown number. I don't normally answer those, but something told me to pick up. It was a detective from the local PD in Lindsay's area. He asked if I had a moment to talk about a complaint filed in connection to a crypto fraud report. I nearly laughed. I said, "You'll have to be more specific." He asked if I knew Lindsay Thompson. I said, "Yes." Apparently, Lindsay hadn't told me the whole story. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't find out that friend of hers, the one who convinced her to invest the stolen money, had filed a police report against her, said she threatened him, that she showed up at his place, called him nonstop for days, demanded the money back, even told him she'd make things difficult if he didn't return it. I could hear the detective flipping through notes as he spoke. He said she wasn't being charged yet, but they were looking into it. He asked if I could confirm the money originally belonged to me. I paused. I wanted to lie to say I didn't know anything, but I didn't. I told him yes, the money had been mine, that it was taken without my consent, that I had gotten it back through legal means, and as far as I was concerned, the matter was closed on my end. He thanked me and hung up. The next morning, I drove to my parents' place. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up. My mom opened the door and froze when she saw me. My dad was in the living room reading something and Lindsay was coming down the stairs. Midden. I asked her straight up, "Did you threaten the guy?" She blinked at me like I'd spoken another language. Then she sat down and told the rest. She had gone to his place twice. The second time, she banged on the door for 10 straight minutes, yelling until a neighbor threatened to call the cops. She left him voicemails, ugly ones, not because she thought it would work, because she was scared. She said he promised her money, gave her just enough to believe he'd follow through, then vanished. She said it wasn't about revenge. It was about desperation. Then she said something that stopped me cold. He was never into crypto. It was never real. He told me it was just a game, something he did to see how gullible people could be. He laughed when I gave him the money. That changed everything. I thought she'd made a stupid mistake. I thought she got caught up in a hype train and dumped cash into a pipe dream. But she got conned. For real. She gave my money, our family's peace, to a guy who never intended to do anything but take it. A guy who played her, mocked her, and now had the nerve to report her to the police. I told her we were going to fix it, but this time on my terms. The next day, I called Cynthia again, not to sue, but to build a case. We drafted a statement, gathered evidence, and submitted it to the department investigating the fraud. Messages, bank transfers, screenshots, everything. I told Lindsay I'd help her file a counterclaim, but this was the last time. If she got out of this, we were done playing with fire. She agreed. My parents were quiet for the rest of the week. My dad looked like he wanted to say something every time I stopped by, but he never did. It was like the family had exhausted its drama reserves. Everyone was just tired, but we were still standing. For once, we weren't hiding anything. Not from each other, not from the law. Everything was out in the open now. It was messy but real. Came on a Tuesday. Regular envelope. No markings, nothing special. I almost tossed it aside with the other mail, credit card offers, a dental reminder, a pizza flyer, but then I saw the return address, County District Attorney's Office. I stood in my kitchen for a good 5 minutes before I opened it. I didn't realize my hands were shaking until I nearly tore the paper in half, pulling it out. No charges. Lindsay wasn't going to be prosecuted. Her counterclaim and the supporting evidence had created enough reasonable doubt. The guy, her friend, had gone dark. Never responded to the detective's follow-up calls. No statement, no proof, Just a paper-thin complaint and a couple of voicemails from Lindsay that couldn't hold weight on their own. The case was closed officially. I exhaled long and slow, not because I was relieved for her exactly, more because this entire stretch of my life, the most emotionally exhausting few months I could remember, had finally somehow resolved. I didn't call her right away. I needed a minute. I just sat there on the floor of my kitchen, envelope in my lap, trying to decide how I felt. Relieved, maybe, but not happy. Not yet. An hour later, I texted her, "You're in the clear. No charges." She replied right away, "Can I come over? I want to talk face to face." She arrived that night. No makeup, hoodie, hair pulled back like she hadn't slept much. She handed me coffee in a folder, the kind you take to a job interview. Inside were things I didn't expect to see: job applications, printouts of classes from a local community college, a list of certifications she could pursue: graphic design, UX, digital marketing. She even had a handwritten budget scrolled in pencil with crossed-out numbers and side notes. Nothing glamorous, just effort. And for the first time, real intention. She didn't give me a speech. She just said she knew what she did and she wasn't proud of it. That she understood she'd broken something between us and didn't expect it to snap back into place. She said the only way she could make it right was by doing the hard part, changing. Not for me, not for our parents, just because she couldn't live like this anymore. We talked for hours after that. Not just about the money or the guy who conned her, but about all the stuff we never said before. Like how she always felt like the one who didn't fit, the one who couldn't finish anything. And how I had built this version of myself that never asked for help, never showed vulnerability, and made her feel like I didn't think she was worth saving. That part hit me because it wasn't completely wrong. I had spent so long being the responsible one, the backup plan, the guy who cleaned up after everyone else, that I'd forgotten how it looked from the outside. A week later, I got an invite to dinner from my parents. I almost said no, but I went. They didn't pretend nothing had happened, which I appreciated. We had a simple meal: roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. The kind of meal you eat when you're trying to go back to normal. At the end, my dad handed me an envelope. I thought it was another letter, maybe a note, but inside was a check. $5,000. He said, "We're paying you back. It'll take time, but every cent." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Not because the money mattered anymore. It didn't, but because he finally acknowledged it wasn't theirs to begin with. They send a check every month now. I haven't cashed any of them. I keep them in a drawer, not because I'm holding them over their heads, but because the checks themselves are the real repayment, a reminder that things happened, that they weren't okay, but that people can change if they really mean it. And surprisingly, things got better. Not instantly, not magically, but in small ways. Lindsay enrolled in night classes, got a part-time job with a local marketing firm, entry level. Nothing glamorous, but she shows up. That's more than I ever expected 6 months ago. My parents don't bring up the incident anymore, but they don't avoid it either. There's a weight that's been lifted from family dinners now. Like, we finally stopped pretending everything was fine and just accepted that something's broke. But they didn't have to stay broken. Even Mark, my cousin, messaged me out of nowhere. "Heard you kept everything from falling apart. Proud of you, man." Funny thing is, I don't feel like I held it all together. I feel like I watched it collapse and then decided not to walk away from the rubble. That's probably what real family is, what real loyalty is. It's not blind forgiveness. It's not pretending you weren't hurt. It's choosing after everything to rebuild with the same people who tore it down. And yeah, I changed the code on the safe. No one knows it now but me. I still open it sometimes just to check. It's not full of cash anymore. Just a few documents, a backup drive, some letters I never sent. But it feels solid again. Like maybe I am too.